Hello, everybody. I'm a practicing therapist and I'm also a doctoral student of psychology. Today, I wanted to go over why women might stare at you, but they don't make a move. And this is frustrating for a lot of gentlemen. And you guys in the comments section do mention this. You kind of talk about that fact that this is a woman that stares at you often, or she's looking at you all the time, but she's not making a move. Or you might discuss something in the comment section regarding you saw a woman at one point in public and she was looking at you, but you weren't really sure if that meant interest or what that means. And so you were curious. And rather than me answering every single comment in the comment section, I thought making a video might be more helpful. And actually, the first one is something that you guys already suspected, and we're going to use research to talk about it, that they're interested, but they're nervous about it. And research in 2018 shows that a lot of people perceive that other people like them less than they actually do. That's that perceived gap. And attraction actually makes people act a little bit hesitant, a little bit off, a little bit prominently. Their affect is very nervous or anxious, and they might overthink what to say or what to do. And they might actually avoid certain interactions that might make their fears more prominent or potential. And so people systematically underestimate how others like them after enduring interactions. This creates hesitation. It creates awkwardness. It creates that mixed or cautious behavior which you're seeing. And one of the strongest, most replicated findings explaining this behavior is actually in early interactions. We see this as observed in lab conversations, but we also see it in real life real life relationships, which are applicable to what we're talking about now. And then we see multiple studies, which means that we can get a larger sample size and we can see how this produces over time. And what we see is that, yes, this does persist over time. However, it's typically when you guys know each other a little bit less. If y'all have been married for 10 years, I don't think she's staring at you for possibly a plethora of reasons. Maybe she's mad at you. I don't know. Or maybe she's thinking or lost in thought. But if you guys are not married and you maybe you're friends or maybe you're classmates and she's always staring at you, it really could be that she is interested. But then the question goes, why is she not making a move about it? Well, she could be nervous about it. But the other thing is going to be the next point that we're actually going to talk about. And we're going to spend a little bit of time with this point, a little more time. She's hoping that you will initiate. And this is annoying. I know a lot of gentlemen don't like that ladies expect a man to initiate. And some women do initiate, which gets really confusing. So we're particularly talking about she's hoping for you to initiate, but I want to talk about initiation in general because it's a question you guys ask a lot. Okay, so why do some women initiate and then some women do not? It could be various reasons. It could be their personality. It could be their upbringing, whatever it may be. Sometimes it could be that they're so uncomfortable about their feeling, they might just communicate it. Some women do that. But if you see continuously a certain type of woman is initiating, this could be why. And so I want to explain this. Some women who are taught to not initiate, it comes from the role that their father has played in their life. I'm someone who's very close to my father. So you guys know, I'm probably considered what people call like a daddy's girl. And so this is something I saw in my family. Another thing is I come from Virginia. It's where I was born. And the area I'm in, not Northern Virginia, but the area that I'm in and the area I was born in, went to high school, it's a little bit like people who stay here, they stay here for a long time, like generations and generations stay here. Like folks that I went to high school with, like work at my local IHOP. Folks that I went to middle school with, elementary school, they're like the new gym teacher at the middle school. Like people stay here. And the reason why I bring that up is because that means we know each other to some extent. It means that I can see a lot of different human behavior. And so I know a lot of people in this area that I know what their dad is like. And I know people who are close to their dad and what they kind of behave like and how they act like in comparison to folks maybe without their dad. And what I know in my household, and particularly with how my dad acted for me, is actually like the concept of initiation in terms of or towards him without him initiating in a family setting. Like obviously this is a family situation, but these interactions play out into any interpersonal relationship. It does play out. And so what I mean by this is, let's say, for example, I said, I want a Diet Coke, but I'll just take a Coke because I think that the grocery store nearby doesn't have a Diet Coke. And so I made an assumption and I initiated like ahead of time, basically. That's how my dad would perceive it. And this is an actual real example. And what he would say and what he did say is that I shouldn't say that and that I should just ask for a Diet Coke and then he'll get a Diet Coke, whichever store. I don't need to know where he got it from. I just need to say what I want and then he goes and gets it. And so the reason why I say that is because over time, if your dad's always telling you that, because my dad did, you are taught, okay, just say what you want or just feel what you want and don't do anything else. Because if you do anything else, that's disrespect to your dad. And actually, I'm in a long-term relationship with my significant other, and he's the same way. When we're walking to the in a park or whatever, the area where the cars are, he always stands on the outside. I think that's pretty normal. But we switch sides depending on if we're like turning or something of that sort. And to him, and he has told me this, it's disrespectful if I walk on the inside because I'm doing it because I don't want him to I don't want him to always be the one moving. But if I do that, it's disrespectful. I should just keep walking, and then he moves me to the inside. That's what I'm supposed to do. I'm not supposed to take initiative and do it myself. That's disrespectful. And so I was taught that. And I know a lot of women who grew up with their dad, they were taught that. And then in their relationship, that like with their husband, that's what happens as well. And that's the same thing with my relationship. I'm not supposed to. It's disrespectful. I don't know if I know not every guy is like that, but some guys are like that. He's from the Midwest, and so it might be cultural. My significant other, I'm not sure. But that is something that I was taught, for example. And so what does this have to do with initiation from a larger standpoint or romantic standpoint? Obviously, in my relationship, that's a romantic example, which is why I gave it to you. But there's another pattern that shows up. Some women are taught to initiate, and I will explain how this happens because a lot of you guys ask me, where does this happen where some women are very initiative and how come they tend to be maybe a little bit emotionally unstable? Not all the time is this the case, because it could be a plethora of reasons. But more often than not, if a woman is always continuously initiating in her relationships, usually it's because that's how her relationship was like with her dad. She might have had an absent dad, a dad who was disinterested in how she feels, a dad who didn't teach her certain manners or boundaries or whatever it is. And that's not a bad thing. It's not her fault. In fact, it's likely the lack of, a father. And so she's taught that the relationship, or in her interpersonal relationships, she's supposed to chase. She's supposed to initiate. And that's what she was taught because maybe her dad never picked up the phone, or she doesn't know who he is. She doesn't know what kind of man he is. And she's always chasing, always hoping, always looking. And so just an example of those things, you can see it's more likely than not women who initiate, not always, please understand, they may have some of those childhood wounds, or they might have less experience with male figures who taught them a certain perspective because of that. So a lot of you guys ask, why is it that women who initiate, they tend to be a little bit mentally unstable? Not all the time, but that could be a reason why. She actually has a father wound. The next one is you might be acting standoffish, which she has trouble reading you. So she might be trying to figure you out. And already we can see, based on research in 2025, there is a gap between there's a perceived gap and then there's an actual gap. And there's a gap from those two standpoints. And so the perceived gap is what we think other people feel. What we think is that typically most people, they think they like the person more than the other person likes them. That is a perceived gap. The actual gap is usually much smaller or sometimes non-existent from that perspective. And so already she assumes that she likes you more, typically based on this research in 2025. Now, if you're acting standoffish, that's a little bit more difficult. So she might think you're not interested, even if she likes you. The next one is she stares at everyone. She likely because she's anxious. A lot of people who have social anxiety, I see two camps where some, they don't look at you at all. And then some, they look because they're hypervigilant. Maybe they're going to get bullied because they were bullied when they were younger, etc. So she might have that case. And I work with people with social anxiety. So if anyone wants to book a call with me, that's going to be pinned in the comments or in the description box. But that is very, very common. She might genuinely feel like she's always has to be hypervigilant. So it might not be necessarily you. And if this is what you notice, she could be potentially anxious. Pay attention to how else she behaves in her surrounding area. And then if it's not you, you can understand it's probably just because she's anxious. The next one is you look familiar to her. This is true. And if I said this wasn't a case, I would be missing something. That'd be a missing piece of this puzzle, because the reality is maybe she's looking at you because you look familiar and she's trying to figure out, do I know you? Are you the person that I know? Maybe you look like a childhood friend of hers she hasn't seen in a while, right? The next one is important. So we might stop on this and talk a little bit about this before we wrap up the video. She might be trying to figure out if she finds you attractive. Women often have a lot of assessment going on with their relationship. It's usually throughout the marriage and relationship as well, but more often in the beginning of the relationship. She's trying to assess, how do you communicate? How do you stand? Are you standing tall? Are you slumped? And it's not conscious, but women do this. It's actually quite quick, but sometimes it can take a little bit longer. How are you behaving around other people? How are you behaving around the staff? How do you dress? How do you perceive perceive yourself? How often are you looking at other people? Do you come across confident is usually the main one they're looking for. And so that's kind of what some of the reasons why she could be looking at you without making a move. I hope this video is helpful to somebody. Please like, subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.